And next up is Clockwork, The Return, book number 2, written by Nathan Valerio. It is 267 pages, $3.50, and it's available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. After the beta, the adventures of our misfortunes young hero does not end, but is only taking off. With both real life and life in the game, he takes one step at a time as he builds not only his future, but his sister's through his actions in the game world. What follows is Techno returning to a world that has begun its restoration and his actions and reactions to the new advances of the world. There you go. That tells you virtually nothing about the story. Okay. This is the second book in the series. The first book was published almost like 4 years ago. I liked the first book. I read it when it was originally published on the Royal Road and then went to Amazon. I liked in the original book how the main character chose the unpopular race, the Clockwork race, and while he's forced in the game, but he made it the character class and the world was very interesting, combined like a mechanical race with an interesting RPG and crafting system, and I really recall enjoying it a lot. However, things shift in book 2, and that's unfortunate. The beginning of the story is hard to follow. There's no recap. And it because book 1 came out such a long time ago, it was hard for me to even remember who everybody was. And eventually you kind of get a picture because the author chooses to use multiple narrative point of views to tell the story. Every single chapter is a different character's point of view. And so you kind of get little snippets about what their backstory is, their connection to the main character, and eventually kind of jogs your memory. But it's a challenge. And that point of view, the multiple narrative point of view thing is actually different from book 1, if I recall. I may be mistaken. I tried to go over book 1 to see if it was different, but it was mostly the main character's point of view in book 1. And in book 2, I want to say the main character's point of view is the least told. There's probably about 6 or 7 different point of views that the story is told from in this novel. And that's one of the things combined with it feels like a new character to me in a lot of ways. Like the main character in the story is very petulant. He's very, when he feels slighted, he feels like he has to get revenge and he has to make someone pay. And it's a kind of a petty thing that made me kind of not like the character. And I just don't remember him being that way in book 1. And maybe part of this is that I have a certain nostalgia or memory for this first book, and book 2 just isn't living up to that expectation in some way. That could be part of why this novel didn't really work for me. But for me, the things I can kind of identify are the fact that one, the POV thing, change POV that's not my thing. That really bugs me sometimes, especially when it doesn't really seem to serve any purpose. And that was kind of the case. And the main character not really being relatable and me wanting to root for him was another thing. But essentially by the time I got to the action and dungeon diving in the story, which does happen eventually, including some crafting in there, the story had kind of lost my interest, and nothing from then on was really there to regain my interest. The main character and his crew, they get on a flying ship and they eventually go on some adventures and some XP grinding. They kill some monsters, and there's some slight world development in introducing new races to the MMO. And there's some real life stuff that actually is pretty decent. But most of the game stuff was just, he's going to go kill some stuff and gain some experience points and level up. And some of the levels that were really jumpy. And the story just didn't unfold as nicely and interestingly as book 1 did, at least for me. That's kind of what it comes down to. A lot of the adventuring in this book is summarized as well. And part of that is because it's not from the same point of view. It's from different characters' point of view. Like, the main character did this, and this today, and I feel like this way, and we're gonna go do some adventuring or crafting it now, and or like some negative points of view, like different characters coming and saying, I can't believe this is happening to my great people, and we're so superior, and the Clockwork people are horrible, and so a lot of the adventuring was just kind of summarized, and that didn't really work for me either. So again, this isn't a terrible story. It just wasn't interesting for me. So for me, it gets a score of 5 out of 10. Clockwork, The Return, book number 2, with a score of 5 out of 10.